नमस्कार Nepalese Association of Victoria को तर्फबाट म आलोक पौडेलको तपाईहरुलाई बाचा गरे बमोजिम फोकल पोइन्ट न्याब्स फोकल पोइन्ट सिरिजको एपिसोड 15 लिएर फेरि तपाईहरु समक्ष उपस्थित भएको छु। हाम्रो यो कार्यक्रमको प्रमुख उद्देश्य भनेको हाम्रो कम्युनिटी मेम्बरहरुलाई हाम्रा आफ्नाहरुलाई थोरै जानकारी दिउँ कुनै पनि टपिकको बारेमा भन्ने र आजको हाम्रो टपिक हो काउन्सिल इलेक्सन। काउन्सिल इलेक्सन आइरहेको छ, त्यसमा हाम्रो अधिकार के हो, त्यसमा हाम्रो दायित्व के हो, हामीले किन भोट दिने, कसलाई भोट दिने, भोट दिएर हामीले के पाउँछौं, भोट दिएनौं भने हामीलाई के कस्तो सजाय हुन्छ कि फाइन पेनल्टी के हुन्छ भन्ने सम्बन्धी आज हामी कुराहरू गर्नेछौँ। र आजको हाम्रो विज्ञ we do have a special guest. As you can see already, he is here with us. I'll just give you a brief introduction. हाम्रो आजको विज्ञको शुभ नाम छ कर्नर सोन ओ राइली। मैले अलिकति प्रोनाउन्सिएसन मिस्टेक गरेँ होला, उहाँले फेरि सचाउनुहुन्छ हैन। उहाँ चाहिँ ड्यानिडोङ काउन्सिलमा विगत 12 वर्षदेखि काउन्सिलर भएर चुनाव जितेर काउन्सिलर भएर काम गर्दै आइरहनु भएको छ र एक साल चाहिँ उहाँले सिटी अफ ग्रेटर ड्यानिडोङको मेयरको पद पनि सम्हालिसक्नु भएको छ। र आजको यो एपिसोडमा काउन्सिल इलेक्सन सम्बन्धी हामीलाई आवश्यक इन्फर्मेसन दिन दक्ष पनि हुनुहुन्छ, योग्य पनि हुनुहुन्छ र हामीलाई साथ दिनलाई समय मिलाएर आइदिनु पनि भएको छ। तपाईहरु समक्षबाटै कलेक्ट गरेको क्वेशनहरु यहाँ मसँग छ, त्यो क्वेशनहरु म उहाँसँग राख्ने छु। यो कार्यक्रम पछि पनि तपाईहरुलाई केही क्वेशन सोध्न मन छ भने हामीलाई जानकारी दिनुहोस्, फेरि पनि सोन सम्बन्धी अथवा अरु कुनै विषय सम्बन्धी तपाईहरुको प्रश्न पुर्याउने हामी काम गर्नेछौँ। तर यो हाम्रो कार्यक्रमको उद्देश्य भनेको बेसिक इन्फर्मेसनहरु दिने मात्रै हो। कुनै तपाईहरुलाई प्रोफेसनल एडभाइस चाहियो भने चाहिँ अरु प्रोफेसनलहरुसँग सम्पर्क गर्नु पनि सक्नुहुनेछ। स्पेसिफिक इन्फर्मेसन चाहियो भने चाहिँ प्रोफेसनलहरुसँग सम्पर्क गर्दा ठीक हुन्छ। आजको हाम्रो कार्यक्रमको उद्देश्य भनेको चाहिँ बेसिक इन्फर्मेसन दिने काउन्सिल इलेक्सन सम्बन्धी। अब धेरै ढिला नगरिकन कार्यक्रम सुरु गरौँ। म सोनलाई नै छोटो इन्ट्रोडक्सन दिने अवसर दिन्छु र त्यसपछि क्वेशन एन्सरको सेसन सुरु हुन्छ सदा चाहिँ। Son, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for your valuable time. Right, I have given a little intro in our own language, but I'm not sure how right I was, so I'll just let you give a quick introduction about yourself to our community.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I'm Sean O'Reilly. I've been elected to Greater Dandenong Council since 2012. So that's 3 terms of 4 years. So each council term that we get elected to is 4 years. I was also elected the mayor of the city of Greater Dandenong in 2015, and I live in Springvale.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Son. Thank you for a brief intro, and thank you for being with us here today. Our community and Nepalese Association of Victoria really appreciates your time.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start with the questions that are collected from our community. It's just what we are seeking is general information.
Understood.
Okay, so let's just start right from the beginning. All right, this is the first question, and I think it's one of the most important questions as well. What is the purpose of council election?
Okay, so the purpose of a council election is that everybody in the community gets to choose who they want to represent them in the running of the council. Now, the role of a councillor is I find is quite sometimes misunderstood. A council law, that is myself currently, and for example, in Greater Dandenong we have 11 councillors. In the other councils around Victoria there might be 9, there might be 5 councillors, but that group of councillors that the public elects basically make all the important decisions of that council, and they act as like a board of directors. If you know, in a company you've got a board of directors that sit around a table and make all the important decisions. That group of councillors that the public selects make all the important decisions, such as how much in the budget to spend on roads, how much in the budget to spend on libraries. Should we spend less money on playgrounds, or should we spend more money on building a new aquatic facility? So the councillors that are elected make those important decisions, and they also make decisions on council policy. So, you know, how many trees should the council plant in the next 12 months? Things like that. So the role of a councillor is very important, and the purpose of a council election is for the public to choose who they want to represent them in the running of the council.
Okay, so every council could have different policies.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. And so the next question is kind of related to the first one. It says, what is involved in a council election, right? You mentioned that board of director. So tell us more about that part. Like, what's involved in choosing, like, who sits where? How is that figured out?
Okay, so the structure of the council, as I've described, is that, you know, you elect in Greater Dandenong 11 councillors for an example, to sit on the board of the council, if you like, to make those important decisions. Those councillors also choose who the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the council, will be. So as a councillor with the other group of councillors, we choose the CEO. Okay. And the CEO handles all the day-to-day running of the council. So, you know, they're there in the office 9 to 5, taking all the queries, managing all the departments. As a councillor, I'm not involved in the day-to-day operation. In fact, I'm not allowed, under the Local Government Act, I'm not allowed to get involved in the day-to-day operation of the council. Okay. I just sit back and make the important decisions, the broad sort of parameters on how the council will operate. And we delegate all the day-to-day operations of the council to the CEO that we've chosen. So and the CEO employs all the staff that are required for the council to operate.
Yeah.
To answer the direct question, what is involved in a council election is that basically every 4 years, that group of councillor representatives stop becoming councillor representatives. So, as for example,
every 4 years.
Every 4 years. So this Saturday, I think, I'm no longer a councillor, and the public gets to choose the new group of councillors. It might include me. If it may include someone new. That's basically you refresh or reset the group of councillors for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And basically, what's involved in a council election is that anybody on the that is enrolled to vote can nominate themselves, or say anybody in the public can say, I want to run as a councillor, and put my name up and try and get enough votes so that I get in that position. So you don't need any minimum qualification to become a councillor. Yeah. Or any minimum amount of experience. All you need to be able to do is to convince enough people to vote you onto the council.
Okay. But to be like, when we see, like, I live in Springvale, and then I've seen 3 choices that I have to vote.
Yes.
But how does that 3 came up to be there? Was that the only application? What if 100 people applied to be councillor?
Yeah. So on the ballot paper, or if there was 100 people nominate to be a councillor, then you'd have 100 people on the ballot paper.
Oh, wow.
So there's no, you know, apart from a few minimum things, like you have to do an online course for 10 minutes or something like that. Okay. Apart from sort of some minimum checks and balances, basically anyone can nominate.
Okay.
And you know, we always encourage like a diverse group of people to nominate from different multicultural backgrounds, from different social stratas and income levels and things like that. So all the people that you see on your ballot paper
Yeah.
have paid the $250 deposit,
Okay.
which they'll get back if they get a minimum of I think it's 4% of the votes,
Okay.
and they're all listed, so you can choose any one of them.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. So you mentioned the councillors are not involved in day-to-day operation. So normally, I think it's one of the questions that a lot of us would want to know as well. So all the councillors, do they normally have a day job somewhere else?
Yeah, well, many do. So
Okay.
I do. I work in IT, and you'll find that many councillors have a day job, have a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday job. Some councillors might have retired from their day job, so they don't. But you'll find that many councillors do. The amount of compensation we get for our time as councillors is around about $45,000 a year.
Okay.
So, and what as far as a weekly number of hours I would spend realistically, it's mainly on a Monday night. We start about 5 p.m. Monday. We go through till about 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m. Monday, plus a few things. I would spend round about an average of 6 hours per week
Okay.
for my councillor duties.
Oh, okay. That's another good thing. I actually thought, and there might be a lot more in our community as well, thinking they heaps more hours that the councils put in day-to-day operation. There we go. We learned something
Well,
new.
I mean, the thing is, and with an elected position, it's really up to me
Yeah.
on how much time I want to spend. So you know, some councillors will go to every single community event, or they'll read every bit of paper that's given to them, so they can spend, you know, up to 20 hours a
Yeah.
week. It's really, with elected positions,
Yeah.
you don't have a boss.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're elected there until for the next 4 years. So how you do it, how much time you commit to it, is
Yeah.
really up to the person themselves.
Okay, cool. All right, that's good to know. Let's move on to the next question now. It's again one of our community members' question. How is the council elections different from federal elections?
So, well, I mean, the most fundamental difference between a council election and a federal election is they're two different. Well, one is your topmost House of Parliament in the nation, and they deal with different issues to council. So you'll find that in Australia we have 3 levels of government,
Yeah.
and there is a little bit of overlap on what they're responsible for, but mostly, for example, like the federal government, you're getting more national policies like immigration. They collect income tax. They manage the borders. A lot to do with like all your Centrelink benefits and that sort of thing. So all those top level national issues are handled in a federal, that you're electing your representative to for the federal election, and for local government you're electing someone to local council, and local councils mostly deal with things like parks, roads, libraries, community facilities, and all the sort of things that when you step outside around your local area.
Yeah. And is there much interference from the federal government to the local council governments in terms of what they want to do, or?
I'd say no. So because with their different spheres of responsibility, you wouldn't see much interplay between federal law or the federal government policy and local government policy. There is, depending on what it is, but generally there isn't. What you'll see more interaction between is local government and the state government, because these more of what the state government does affects local government.
Okay.
Like it's actually local government is only constituted through an act of the state parliament. So all our powers of local government have been given to us by an act of the state government. So you'll find that that some of the things we have interplay with is things like planning laws, so where people can build things, have what density they can build things to, and also we get grants from federal and state government to do different things.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. All right, now next comes through more of individuals, like myself and a lot of our viewers there. So the question is, what does having a voting right mean?
Okay, well it's interesting, and there's some history to this. So in Australia we have compulsory voting, and finding that it's quite unique in this country. We're not the only country with compulsory voting, but you find that a lot of the other sort of modern democracies, so like the US, England, they have voluntary voting.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to vote, if you don't show up to vote, there's no problem. In Australia, if you don't vote in your council election, you will get a notice to say that you are fined $99. Please explain. So if you like, it's not just a right to vote, it is a responsibility to vote in the local council elections. And there's always been arguments for and against that. They've said, well, why do you force people to vote?
That was my next question. What should I vote?
Absolutely, so and that's always been a debate. Pluses and minuses for forcing people to vote. I mean, my personal view is that you see in countries like the US and so on, when there's voluntary voting, what you find is that only the people that are really motivated to vote. So the people that are sort of in between, or don't care too much, they don't vote as much. And the problem is when you get people that are really motivated to vote, then it's all the more people on the extremes, like the gun lobby, or abortion rights, those sorts of people. So they're more likely to vote when there's voluntary voting. So that's why I'm in favour more of compulsory voting. I know it's a hassle. We don't. It's something we've all got better other things to do with our time. But essentially, with the council postal voting, you just look at the candidates, make your best judgment, and then put it in the post box. So it's not that arduous to maintain a strong democracy, I think.
Yeah, no, it actually makes sense the way you put it out, because before I used to argue as well, like, why should I vote? But now it makes sense in a way that it might not allow that wrong group of people, like you say, if they want to pass some wrong decisions and stuff, they will make their own campaign with their group of people, and then they will try to impose that on everyone. So if everyone's voting, that cannot happen.
Correct.
So yeah, I think we should vote. Thank you. And next is, what if I'm, like you said, you get a $99 fine if you don't vote. But what if I'm overseas or at the hospital?
Okay, so what happens is that people that haven't voted will get a fine notice, and on that notice they'll be asked to explain why they didn't vote. Now, if you have a genuine reason why you didn't vote, so a medical reason, overseas, then, like, I can't speak for the Electoral Commission, but from what I've heard, in my experience, if you've got a reasonable excuse why you didn't vote, then generally that is accepted by the Electoral Commission. So then, in my experience, this is only my personal view, I'm not guaranteeing this to everybody, but if for example, if you had some sort of medical certificate or documentation or something to say, okay, you had this particular condition, or that would really back up what you're saying. But generally, the Electoral Commission on the fine notice will accept a reasonable excuse.
Okay. Well, it is your responsibility to vote, but then if you can give a valid reason why you are not voting, then you get the excuse too.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Which is fair enough. Okay. So now the next question is relating to the candidates we vote? Who should we choose? So what's the best way? Because I don't, like, I'm talking in behalf of the community as well, and my personal understanding is as well, I don't have much time to go, do a big research about all the candidates. So what's the best way for us to make sure we voted the right
and look, I mean, this is really difficult, and I acknowledge that this is really difficult for people that are just living their lives as normal day to day. They're not interested in council issues. They might not read about what's happening in the local newspaper with their local councillor. It is really difficult because even now people in other council areas say, "Oh, who should I vote for?" And I look at all the candidates and think, like, how do you work it out? It is quite difficult. But what you'll find is the more time that's spent like researching about the candidates on the internet, Google searching, look at their Facebook page. If they're an existing councillor, then you'll probably find some local news articles on their views or how they voted or what sort of issues they've voted in the past, and that sort of thing. But I really encourage people to take as much time as you can to select who you're going to vote for, because as I've said earlier, the positions that councillor positions are extremely important as far as how money's going to be spent in your local area and things like this. So I acknowledge that it's difficult, that you just see a whole lot of faces and they all seem to say the same thing, and there's all seem to say nothing bad and all that sort of thing. So try and dig a little bit underneath what people are saying. Try, and that time, I guarantee you, if more people spend more time on selecting their candidates when they vote, we'll end up with better councillors, which will then will lead to better decisions being made in local government.
Okay. So that was about who to vote. कसलाई भोट दिने भन्ने कुरामा चाहिँ अब सकेसम्म बढी रिसर्च गर्दा राम्रो क्यान्डिडेटहरू पुग्छ भनेर, त्यही भएर हामीले भोट दिनुभन्दा अगाडि जुन काउन्सिलमा हामी छौँ त्यसको चुनावमा को उठेको छ त, हामी मध्ये नै कतिजना हाम्रै कम्युनिटीबाट पनि चुनावमा उठिसक्नु भएको छ। त्यही भएर अरूको बारेमा भन्दा हाम्रो कम्युनिटी मेम्बरको बारेमा हामीलाई बढी थाहा हुन्छ। सबैको रिसर्च गर्न भ्याइएन भने एटलिस्ट जसलाई भोट दिने हो उसको बारेमा चाहिँ रिसर्च गरेर भोट दिँदाखेरि भोलि काउन्सिलले गर्ने कार्यक्रमहरूमा उसको पनि हात हुन्छ। त्यही भएर तपाईँको पनि प्रतिनिधित्व हुन्छ। त्यही भएर रिसर्च गरेर क्यान्डिडेट चुन्दा चाहिँ एक हदसम्मको रिसर्च गरेर चुन्नु भन्ने जस्तो कुरा गर्नुभयो सनले। थ्याङ्क यू सन। लेट्स जस्ट गो टु द नेक्स्ट वान. So once we've chosen the candidates, we've done our votes and everything, how are the votes counted?
Okay, so with a postal election like this, so the deadline is for people to post their vote is 6 p.m. this Friday, the 25th of October. What will happen then is that, those votes will go to the Electoral Commission, which is the government body that is running the election. The Electoral Commission will wait for a few days for Australia Post to deliver the votes to them. What they'll do is they'll then start the counting process. So counting process is open, and any candidate is allowed to appoint what's called a scrutineer. So I'm not allowed to watch the counting process, but I can appoint a representative to oversee the counting process. They're not allowed to touch any votes or really interact in any great way as far as the counting process goes, but they'll basically put all, generally if it's hand counting, they'll put all the votes on a table, just empty them all out onto a table, and then start sorting them out and say, okay, this person got this many number ones and so on. So that is probably how it will be in a manual counting process, and then they go through that, they tally up all the votes, they distribute preferences, and then the Electoral Commission will make an announcement and say, okay, these candidates have been successfully elected to the positions of councillors.
Okay. Yeah, so we're towards the end
Okay.
of the questions. There is one question, we'll get that in a second, but this is another one related to what we're discussing. So say for example there's 3 or 4 candidates there.
Yep.
What if I only write one number?
Okay.
What is my vote still counted?
No, your vote will not be counted if you only write one number. So we have fairly strict policy as far as voting. It's called voting formally or voting informally. So voting is the correct process. Is that you start at 1 for your first choice. So you put 1 next to the name of the person that is your first choice, and you continue 1, 2, 3, 4 until no boxes are empty. So
Okay.
if you have 3 candidates, make sure you put 1 in your first choice, 2 in your second choice, 3 in your third choice. So don't leave any boxes empty. Don't use ticks. Don't use crosses.
Okay.
So and as long as you follow that, make sure your numbering's clear, and then your vote will be counted. If you don't, then it's most probable that your vote will not be counted.
Okay. भनेपछि जतिजना उम्मेदवार छन् त्यतिको पछाडि नम्बर राख्नै पर्यो. आफूलाई जो सबभन्दा बढी मन परेको छ उसलाई 1 नम्बर, त्योभन्दा अलिक कम मन परेकोलाई 2 नम्बर, 3 नम्बर, 4 नम्बर क्रम अनुसार नम्बर दिँदै जाने. तर जतिवटा उम्मेदवार छन् त्यति सबैको कोठाको छेउमा चाहिँ एउटा नम्बर हुनै पर्यो. Now the next question related to this one as well. So say someone said, "Oh, I didn't like any of the candidates. Can I just write on the bottom, I don't want to vote to any of these? Will I still be fined, or what happens in that case?"
So in that case, and this happens quite a bit, So sometimes the Electoral Commission will receive ballot papers that are blank, or ballot papers where they've drawn pictures on them, or all sorts of things. So the rules are, as long as you've returned the ballot paper, then that's counted that you've returned it, and you won't be sent a fine notice then.
Okay.
So if someone has an extreme strong objection that they absolutely know what all the candidates are about, and they hate all the candidates, or for whatever reason, then that's the possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, naturally, I would ask people to take the time and sort of distinguish between the candidates and actually vote, because it is important.
All right. Thank you, son. And what happens if someone voted twice?
So under the current system, with the technology they've got now, it is impossible to vote twice. So this election and possibly previous elections, every ballot paper has a tracking number.
Yeah.
So it is impossible to vote twice. Once they receive the first ballot paper with the individual voter's tracking number, it's some computer number or something on it, then another vote cannot be registered. So it is impossible to vote twice.
Okay. Thank you, son. That is all my questions. Thank you for your time today. And from going through all this, now I have realized we should vote. We have to vote. And yeah, so to make sure we send our representatives to the council for the betterment of the community, we should vote. This is all from my part. If there is anything that I forget to ask and you still want to let our community members know, the stage is yours.
Okay, thanks. Well, I
Just
think
on the video. So
Yep, sure. I think we've covered everything. I would emphasise that it is important to vote. Get your votes in by this Friday, 6 p.m. And just on that difficult question of which candidate to choose, another thing I might add as well is that most candidates will have contact information, that being an email address and or a phone number. And if you've got particular things that are important to you, so don't just wait for candidates to tell them what they think is important, but if you've got particular issues that are important to you, then I would encourage you to reach out and contact all your candidates and ask them what their opinion is on the issue the issues that are important to you. And their response, whether they respond or not, and or the quality of their response should then inform your voting about who you're going to vote for.
Thank you very much, Sean. That is all from us today. भिडियो हेरिदिनु भयो यो भिडियो हाम्रो पेजमा पछिसम्म पनि हुन्छ अरू केही थप जानकारी इलेक्सन सम्बन्धी चाहियो भने हामीलाई सम्पर्क राख्नुहोला हामी सम्बन्धित निकायसम्म तपाईहरुको प्रश्नलाई पुर्याउने प्रयास गर्नेछौं आजको लागि जय नेपाल जय न्याय थ्यांक यू